Welcome to the show, everyone. I'm your host. My name is Mark. And today on the show, I got Calvin. Calvin, welcome.
Thank you. My name's Calvin, and I'm an alcoholic.
Oh, my name's Mark, and I'm an alcoholic too.
Nice.
Thank you. Yeah. Oh, hey, the recovery band who's also in recovery wants to say hi.
Say hi.
Kick it, boys. And the studio audience, they might be normies, but they want to clap for you.
Quite the crowd.
I know, right? Yeah, it was this kind of like standing ovation. It was almost like the wave at a stadium. So so we were just getting into a conversation about the meeting that we just came from. And what were you about to say about that? Let it rip.
Very spiritual. It's funny because the two people that kind of butt heads, I know, and I take away from both of their shares, and I take suggestions, and I've learned from meetings that I've been in attendance their viewpoint, and I find both advantageous and insightful, but they are polarizing. That's how I took it.
That was probably one of the most polarizing meetings I've ever been to.
Yeah.
And it was like I saw alcoholics just walk out. I saw people's heads explode.
Yeah.
And so a quick synopsis of the meeting. So the chair gets up and he's sharing about his higher power, which happens to be Jesus, which I never hear shared in a meeting. And you just saw like people's, like you could see steam coming out of people's ears because it's a spiritual program. But also too, like I felt some steam coming out of my ears, and I'm like, all of a sudden I'm like, why?
Yeah.
Why am I upset?
Yeah.
And it was a very like eye-opening but polarizing meeting. Like that was a great subject.
Yeah. And all in all, I thought it ended on a pretty good note. And while there were moments of like, what's the word? They were insulting each other at points, and there was some negative connotation going back and forth, but I think it ended on a good note. And I think a trend or something that I heard after the confrontational shares were the theme was acceptance a lot, and
Yeah.
I think that's important, and I think that's something that's very pivotal, and it's a big part of our program, and I see it in just not only like accepting a new way of life, not being able to drink or drug, but accepting other people's viewpoints that are working the same or the similar program as you, and you have to accept how they approach it, because I've heard a lot, like my program's not going to keep you sober. And I saw like a lot of that in this most recent meeting.
Yeah, acceptance is a huge part. And acceptance is several things. Like when I look at acceptance was the answer in the big book, even 416 going into 417, at last acceptance proved to be the key to my drinking problem. And then later on in that paragraph, it says, when I stopped living in the problem, began living in the answer, the problem went away. And then even further down the page, and acceptance is the answer to all my problems today. When I am disturbed, it is because I find some person, place, thing, or situation, some fact of my life unacceptable to me, and I can find no serenity until I accept that person, place, thing, or situation as being exactly the way it is supposed to be at this moment.
What's funny is, I'm about a little over 2 years into sobriety.
Awesome. Continuous?
Yes.
All right.
Thank you.
Awesome.
And my original home group read acceptance before the meeting started, every meeting. And I rolled my eyes at that paragraph for so long. And I still like cringe at times. Like when I'm having a bad day, it's like, that's the last thing I want to hear. But the more I take a step back, digest it, realize, like for me, and it didn't happen right away. It took maybe over a year.
Yeah.
But I truly now view sobriety as a gift.
Yeah.
And even on my bad days or days of frustration, I can find so many more things to be grateful for than what is really upsetting me. And I think that ties back to that excerpt.
Yeah, it took, I completely agree. Now, it took a while for me to practice acceptance in the program myself, but isn't it, like, I hit this point though, where I had to accept that I needed some acceptance.
Yeah.
And that was kind of an awkward place to be. Like, when did that kind of, like, you said it took you about a year to kind of.
Well, I like what you just said, except that I needed to utilize acceptance more in my life. That's kind of what you said. And like, if that was easier for me to do, I relate that to like acknowledging that I need help.
Yeah.
And that happened fairly early, like big part of my shares my first year, and I still do it today. One of my favorite meetings was a beginner's meeting, which we really stuck to steps 1, 2, and 3. And I can't tell you how many times I've shared in that meeting about how I had to work step 1 backwards. I was fully, like, I could admit that my life was unmanageable. The first meeting I walked into, my first meeting was in a detox. And
Really?
It's funny because I went to a detox twice. The first time I was pretty convinced like I was sick, and like substance abuse and alcoholism was a real issue. And I was able to never not pick up a drink of alcohol after that first trip to detox, but I had my medical marijuana license, and that was really kind of my substance of choice. And I was able to make it like maybe 2 days after detox without smoking. And then on the third day, I found myself scraping residue off a piece and doing whatever I could to get a fix. And that kind of scared me, because I acknowledged that like sobriety was probably what I needed, but like I couldn't just white knuckle it. There was a time in my life where I could white knuckle sobriety, but I also am very hesitant with comparing that apples to apples to my trips to and from detox most recently, because back then I was not like convinced that I needed, like, sobriety was my path for the rest of my life. Today I am.
Yeah.
And it took a lot of pain and suffering and humiliation and just multiple bottoms for me to get there. But like, I tie it back. This was another thing I've heard in the rooms, and I have a list of a couple themes that I hear in the rooms, and we'll bounce back and forth if you're cool with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do it.
Like, the one that I cringed at too, other than acceptance when I first came into the rooms, was hearing people mention or say sobriety is a gift. And that took a lot. That took probably a year too.
Yeah.
I was like, fuck, F off. Like my life was unmanageable, and I was really hurting, and I couldn't like stay afloat in multiple facets. I was very sick. And like, I agree that I need to be sober, but you're never going to convince me that like it's a blessing in disguise.
Yeah.
And, that I think when I started going through my spiritual awakening, I started opening up to that. And I truly believe it today. I really do. And I see it almost on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And it's like, another thing I've heard in the rooms a lot is just wait till a miracle happens. And now I after about a year, like, life started getting a little easier and softer. Like, there's an easier, softer way. After a year, I started seeing that on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And the miracles keep happening. It wasn't just one for me. Like there were multiple that like I could, list out on my fingers that were like really big for me, but like I can't say that it was just one.
Yeah. So was it for you? Was it on page 393? It says this, and this is how I thought, and maybe it kind of rolls into that. When he told me he went to AA meetings 3 or 4 times a week, I thought, poor man. He has nothing better to do. What a boring life it must be for him, running around to AA meetings with nothing to drink. Boring indeed. No bouncing off walls, no falling downstairs, no regular trips to the hospital or emergency rooms, no lost cars, and on and on. And so are you telling me like you knew that you needed to, but you didn't think that it was going to be a lifelong journey?
Right. Yeah. A new way of life. Like, no, I didn't. And it's funny because I see shades of similarities between you and my first sponsor, who is a dear friend of mine. And we drank and drugged together for like a year or two. And then he got sober and he just saw me continuing to struggle and like really just hitting bottom after bottom in Chicago. And, he was very big into the spirituality concept, and I wanted my life to become more manageable, and I believe from day one that getting sober would help that or maybe cause that.
Yeah.
But I didn't, another theme we hear is like alcoholism is not like it's one of the issues, but this is like a spiritual program. I'm kind of paraphrasing, but like I couldn't, when I first came in, and it took months, if not a full year, for me to draw on like how defeated and spiritually ill I was to relate it to like my bad habits and my decision making and almost being a slave to alcohol and substances on a daily basis. And spirituality is some will say it's the answer. I would say it's like, if not the biggest tool in our program.
Yeah.
And I love hearing people that are very passionate about it. And also, one thing that I really respect and it really like inspires me is your love for the big book. Like it a lot, but way better than me. And just being able to take out sentences or paragraphs, because I haven't really read much past 164 and you're all over it. So I can always learn something. And
we have to stay teachable.
Yeah. That was another theme I jotted down going into this is having an open mind.
Yeah.
And there is an old timer that I'm pretty connected with. He's not my sponsor, but there were times when we were meeting outside of the rooms on a weekly basis, and we text and we help each other when we can. And he would always like, it kind of got annoying during the first year because like you hear like the same rah speech, like you gotta do this and that and this and that, and it's like it was like automated. It was almost like it was just mindless. Like he's gone to probably thousands of meetings where like he doesn't realize he's saying almost the same thing every time, but he is. And one of the things that he really was in his shares was keeping an open mind.
Yeah,
and I think that's so important. And I try to. The more that I remind myself to do that on a daily basis, the more I realize like how insane and delusional and closed-minded and in my own head I was for years drinking and drugging.
Yeah, it is. Like today's meeting was the exact reminder of keeping an open mind. Sure. Because I remember when I first came into AA after treatment, I started hearing people share about God. And I said, you know what? I'm here to be sober. I'm not here to, I'm in recovery. I'm not here to believe in God. And I walked out of that meeting, and the next day, like it was that night, my pink cloud burst. And it was like, and it's like, uh-oh.
I love that you just brought that up. because that was another theme I wanted to touch on.
Yeah.
You know, I circle back to how I worked the first step backwards.
Yeah.
And I was defeated and sick walking into the rooms.
Yeah.
And I believed that like sobriety could really help me. But I fucking saw God on the 12 listed on the 12
Yeah.
steps. And it didn't like, I didn't walk out and I didn't say like, F this is not the solution for me. But I had like, I don't know if I would say a resentment, but like trepidation. I was like, I don't know if this is really what's going to propel me or help me. And I circle that back to growing up in a kind of a dysfunctional family, but going through a divorce and
Yeah.
seeing one parent like all in on the God is everything or God is nothing side.
Mm-hmm.
And then seeing maybe the other parent as being closer to an agnostic, but like viewing how the divorce really kind of hurt the family in the long run. Not saying that it didn't need to happen, but the way it did, I have resentments to this day and I work on. But
Mm-hmm.
I kind of always would side towards the agnostic parent because
Really?
I thought they were more logical and like they were less of the problem.
Uh-huh.
And I still kind of do, but how some person could just believe that God or Jesus is going to fix everything and be so naive really caused me to have a resentment towards seeing God in the steps.
Ooh.
But, and it took close to a year probably for me to like start to like open up, like there's more to it than just like because of my past upbringing,
Uh-huh.
siding on one side or the other. And there's a line in the big book that like I hold on to dear life, like on a daily basis, that just like it was a cure to that issue I was having in my philosophy and really being all in on the steps. And the program is faith without works is dead.
Wow.
And I kind of believe maybe the one parent that was is a complete believer, that like that allowed me to be like, okay, like I could believe as hard as that person, but like if I don't like do the other things,
Yeah.
like it's not going to get me to where I want to be. And that kind of like allowed me to move past my trepidation with believing in a higher power. And the third step is
Yeah.
kind of my favorite. And by no means am I an old timer. And in some ways, like I haven't done all the steps yet.
Okay.
But I work with the sponsor and I've been doing them. And I do them on a daily basis, and I wake up in prayer and I end my day in prayer.
How do you feel when you pray? Like,
Pretty good.
yeah.
I mean, a lot of my prayers and rituals per se are they're kind of mentioned in the big book, I think, but I kind of learned it from the rooms and being able to like hear what someone suggested to do and then read through our literature and then maybe talk with a couple other people in the program allowed me to like pray on a daily basis in a way that I see fit, that I'm comfortable with, and I truly believe it. You know?
Well, therein lies like the contradiction sometimes. It's like, okay, you have a God resentment. Like I had a God resentment coming in, but I'm going to a meeting and I'm praying twice.
Right.
You know, the serenity prayer in the beginning and the Lord's Prayer at the end.
Yep.
And I have no problem with that. But when it's coming to believe, like I was thinking when I came in the rooms, it was, you know, okay, I've got to get a God. I didn't really pick up on that thing that it was a God of my understanding, how I understand him. And so what was the moment that made you come to believe kind of in the program?
Yeah. Oh, this is funny. This is funny. This is just bizarre. Little after a year, I finally was living on my own.
Okay.
Kind of for the first time in my life, and not like in complete panic day after day or month after month. Like, things were manageable. It was a miracle in and of itself, in a way.
How old are you?
I'm 30.
You're 30.
This
Okay.
was at about 28, maybe 29.
Okay.
Oh, it's so funny. Like I said, my main substance of abuse was marijuana. And I used to, years on end, just, indulge on it, get under the influence of it, and then go on long walks and listen to music. Mm-hmm. And I would do so for years and, smoke and then listen to rap music and only hear the lines about them talking about drinking and drugging or drinking and smoking weed. Like those were the lines that stood out to me in rap songs.
Okay. Wait, which rap artist?
Like Nas or...
All right, Nas is good, yeah.
Nas was a big one.
Yeah.
Sure, Jay-Z, sure,
yeah.
Eminem, you name it.
Yeah, Hova.
Yes. Yeah. But what was really... And then so I got sober and I wasn't smoking weed anymore. And like for the first 3 or 6 months, I really didn't listen to much music, or it was like different kind of music, less lyrics. And then after about a year, and I moved out and I got kind of my peace and comfort in my home, being alone, I started going on long walks, whether it be like midday during work on my break or after work before I would go to a meeting or work out. And I started listening to the same artists and some of the same songs. And I wasn't really, like, I knew the lines of them utilizing alcohol and drugs, but the lines that really started sticking out to me were the lines about praying or about God. Whoa. And like for so long, like I just would like maybe mute or like zone out when I was listening to the same song and that line was said. And that was like, Jesus, like how much did I just like, because I probably had a resentment towards God from, my childhood and a divorce and me kind of siding more towards agnostic than a believer. Mm-hmm. Like hearing the same stuff that I listened to for years when I was drinking or drugging and just being so oblivious to it and not hearing it. And then, having a perspective shift and a new way of life and listening to the same stuff that I listened to back in the day and just hearing different parts. It's like, it ties back to like, how you hear like you can read the big book 5 times and 5 different things will stick out to you.
Yeah.
You'll see something different each time you read it. That was kind of like what happened with the music, but it was like changing from hearing them living a fast life of drinking and drugging to like hearing them like putting their faith in a higher power or God or praying. And that was like, whoa.
So you came to believe while listening to Jay-Z.
Yeah, or Nas, or you name it. Like it was, that was not like the only moment, but that was like the moment where I was like, wow, like I was really in my own head or really closed-minded. Yeah. And it took like, they say it takes time for the fog of addiction to lift. Like
it does.
It took over a year for me to.
Yeah.
And then when it finally did, and I was kind of getting my confidence back and life was becoming more manageable. I was able to hold a full-time job for a year, first time
Wow.
in like maybe ever,
Uh-huh.
pay my bills on time, like becoming a functioning adult, which is a big part in why I'm a believer of this program, and just like witnessing that was
Yeah.
like it was wild.
Yeah.
It made me believe more. It made me hunker. I also don't forget, right around that year mark, I don't want to say I got comfortable, but it's like I moved out on my own and I have to budget and like make sure everything is functioning like from a bills and a work standpoint. So I started like backing off on meetings, doing like 3 to 4 a week instead of 1 a day.
Yeah.
And then I kind of, went through that spiritual awakening for a month or two, and then looked at myself in the mirror, and it was like, you have no reason not to do 1 meeting every day. And that's the standard I hold myself to today. I don't, do a meeting every single day, but that's like more weeks than not, I do 7 or more meetings.
Yeah, well, I see you at quite a few meetings. We always end up running into each other. And the thing is, like, you're talking about, like, okay, this took you a year to come to believe, but there is nothing in the big book that says it has to happen right away. For some, it's that white light experience. For others, it's this. But I've come to learn that slow and steady kind of wins the race, and you don't get this whole deal all at once. Some get it quicker than others. Some take longer, but it's kind of where you're at now. I've only known you since probably like December, January?
Yeah, I would say a little less than a year.
Yeah. So and I see this kind of guy that doesn't seem like he's living in bondage, that seems pretty happy and joyous and free. So what was it like before you came to believe, as then and after? Like, I'm sure, life, we have our ups and downs, our struggles, but do you ever stop to think about like what life was like before you got a power greater than yourself?
I had no confidence. I was so defeated. I was really sick. Like I was on the brink of defeat, and I kind of roll my eyes at saying like, this is life or death. But the longer I get sober and the more honest I am with myself, I do believe that. And like,
so acceptance once again.
Sure. Yeah. And just to put in like perspective on how sick I was.
Yeah.
I years ago was going to university, commuting via train to Chicago, about an hour commute one way and then an hour back. And I was just getting high every day, morning and afternoon, whether it be with, cannabis or a cannabis pen. And I was not like I was barely getting by with grades, but I was like health-wise, relationship-wise, like the only friends I had were the ones that were kind of getting high with me.
Yeah.
And I really didn't have a great relationship with my family members at the time, or not nearly a relationship that I'd be proud of and that I kind of have today. And I got really sick one semester, and I made it to like the campus hospital. And like, I was like signing the sheet to sign in to like check in before your appointment.
Yeah.
And I like passed out.
Whoa.
And I woke up, and I wasn't in a coma, but like I was in a bed, and maybe I had an IV attached to me and like EKG on me. And I ended up staying in the hospital for like not quite a week, I don't think, like 5 days. And they were doing tests all throughout my body, like my digestive system, my blood, my maybe to see if I was concussed, like all sorts of different tests. And I was really sick, and they ended up believing that it was like Legionnaire's pneumonia. And I was like, I lost so much weight, and I was like pale as a ghost. And I had friends and family members come visit me in the hospital, and I was very thankful for that. But I was so sick, and I'll never forget, like, in the back of my mind, whether I admitted it to anyone or not, like I knew it was probably the amount of smoking that I was doing, whether it be a weed pen or a Juul vape, like I did that AM and PM every day, like, and I needed it. And I remember like going home from the hospital and like, not like straight up having withdrawals, but having a craving to get my fix again, but like realizing like that's what got me sick. So I reasoned with myself, I'll just call my drug dealer and I'll get edibles and that'll be fine. And I did that for like 5 days, maybe a week. And then I was back smoking again.
Oh, man.
And I never got healthy. It was even before then, but that was like, I don't know, 2018. But from 2018 until 2021, it just kept getting worse and worse. And
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I couldn't hold a full-time job. I could not show up to work 5 days a week, work a full shift, and do that for months on end. Like I couldn't. When I moved to Florida after, pretty much finishing my schooling, I had one more class that I did online, and I didn't complete until my first year of sobriety.
Yeah.
Which was, I touched on it, like Handful of Miracles. That was one of them.
Yeah.
But when I moved to Florida, like I couldn't hold a job unless I was able to sneak away and utilize my medical marijuana during my work shift.
Yeah.
Like I was the opposite of happy, joyous, and free. And that's another theme that I wanted to bring up is like, I realized the bondage I was living in addiction, and it gets more clear every day, every month I get under my belt sober, and I never want to live that again. And it's why I really, practice these principles in all of my affairs.
Yeah. So you got me all jacked up when you were talking there, because I'm like, as soon as you started talking about like that justification, right? Like I'm gonna maybe I just need to switch to edibles, right? Or that is trying to like that really hit a point in me where I'm like, I used to try to do that all the time. Like, okay, I'm not gonna, Jack makes me throw up, right? Jaeger does, but I'll be okay if I go drink beer. But the thing is I would drink beer until I would black out.
Yep.
Right. Or like, okay, it's like,
I shouldn't be doing this anymore. It's starting to catch up to me. So now we got to shift to wine or shift to something. It was always something.
Oh, well, I've been doing too much blow, so I'm just going to go do a bunch of Molly or something,
Sure.
It's like, that'll be like those crutches. Yeah.
Yep.
Now, was it always just marijuana for you?
No, it got really bad like 2014, 2015 with Adderall and just amphetamine abuse, but it was always either pharmaceutical amphetamines. And I eventually got a prescription for it, and Jesus, it just like,
oh wow.
I'm so thankful that nothing really bad happened and that like I have an opportunity to like have a new life today and not live like that. And it was out of control, and I saw acquaintances where they were maybe on a similar pace of a lifestyle with substances as me.
Mm-hmm.
Before I even contemplated getting sober or going to the rooms, that didn't make it. And those still, like, another thing you hear in the rooms, you're going to walk over bodies, and that's not something I take lightly. Like, there's a lot of already into my journey there that's been pretty true. But like that kind of happened before I got sober too. And the more sober I get, the more I can look back at that and be like, this is a gift.
Now, how do you deal with someone's passing in recovery now that you're sober?
It's a good question. I tried to reflect on it with other people in the fellowship that knew the person.
Yeah.
And then another big thing is if I have the opportunity and I come across the right opportunity or the right situation to do so, I do try to honor the person, whether it be writing a message of remembrance or a donation to a funeral. Like that kind of helps me truly believe like that this is not something to be taken lightly and that this is a gift and that not everyone's going to get it. And it doesn't mean that I can't try to help someone every day, but it's not 100% success rate. And it's kind of harsh, but it makes me cling on to the new life and the opportunity I have. Mm-hmm. Like minute by minute, second by second, day by day, and really not take it for granted.
Yeah. So staying grateful.
Sure. Yeah.
What are some ways that you stay grateful in the program or in your life in general?
Yeah. It's become a little easier after the spiritual awakening and like creating pretty strong conscious connection with my higher power on a daily basis. When I first was getting sober, like first 3 months, it was a gratitude list every day. 5 things.
Do you remember what was on those gratitude lists?
Like food, shelter, health, a job, like maybe sobriety would be on it. You know? Like pretty basic necessities that like I took for granted for a long time. And there's a reality check. Those first 3 months, I shared about it earlier this week, I think, in a meeting, were so hard for me because a lot of, I was protecting my ego and drinking and drugging for years by like delusionally thinking that like I was doing fine and that like I was keeping up with other people from my past that I grew up with or I went to university or high school with, and you start realizing like, those first 3 months, like I'm working this job, I'm making this much money, I am living with parents or grandparents, and I don't have money in my bank account, and my grandmother's paying for my car insurance, and like I'm not like supporting myself at all.
Wow.
And I got so depressed those first 3 months. I'll never forget it. Like if I wasn't working, if I wasn't at a meeting, and I think I was working out a little bit, and that's a big thing in my program, but if I wasn't really doing any of those 3 things, I was like just laying in bed, like trying to sleep, but I couldn't because like I was just so depressed. Like my mind was still running, but it was just like it. And my first sponsor really helped me. I mean, I would call him pretty much every day. I would communicate with him every day, text, and we have a similar sense of humor, and we're from the same hometown, and he was really big for me, helping me get through that, and then I started seeing more opportunities, and I was able to gather some pivotal victories per se in my life, like finishing my degree that I worked on for like 7 years. It should have taken 4. It took like 7 or 8. Like
But you got it done.
I finally got it done. And like there was a point when I was my last bottom out, like I really kind of thought like I never would.
Wow.
And that in and of itself is a miracle to me. And then other things started happening, and I was very grateful. It's something I hear, well, it's in a reading, and you would know better than me. I'm pretty sure it's in the big book. The promises will happen sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly, something like that, right?
Yeah, the ninth step promises.
Okay.
And let's see here. It is right here on page 83.
Give it.
If we are painstaking about this phase of our development, we will be amazed before we're halfway through. We're going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. We will not regret the past, nor wish to shut the door on it. We will comprehend the word serenity, and we will know peace. No matter how far down the scale we have gone, we will see how our experience can benefit others. That feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. We will lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. Self-seeking will slip away. Our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. Fear of people and of economic insecurity will leave us. We will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. We will suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we cannot do for ourselves. Are these extravagant promises? We think not. They're being fulfilled among us, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly.
Yeah.
They will always materialize if we work for them.
Yeah.
Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm talking about. And what really, I've heard that hundreds of times, painstaking, and that ties back to kind of what you mentioned. Like sometimes if life starts getting really good really early in sobriety, that could be, I'm not going to say that's a bad thing, but that could be a red flag.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of people share in the rooms how great their life is already, and how it's turning around, and they're getting things back, and like they're so high on their pink cloud, and I'm happy for them, but it's dangerous, you know.
Yeah.
There's someone that goes to meetings with you and I. He's the closest thing that I know of to like a human version of the Grim Reaper, and he will literally be in meetings and tell the whole room, and I wish you a long and painful recovery.
Yes.
And like a lot of people get so offended or turned off by that. And I don't like agree that like that's the only way to do it. But I do think there's a lot of truth in that.
There is. When I first heard him share that, I was like I got so mad,
Yeah.
right? And I was like, what is this guy doing?
Right. What an asshole. Who's talking like this? Like,
Yeah.
is he playing God?
Like, wow, like how sick and suffering are
Right.
you, right? But I get what he's saying, because
Yeah.
I had these moments where it's like, okay, I came out of treatment. I felt really great, right? They asked me, what is your chance of, using again and relapsing? And I said 0. And all of a sudden, bam, there went the pink cloud,
Yeah.
right? And I was like, uh-oh. And then all of a sudden, a little bit more in recovery, like things started to get real good. And then you realize, I'm pink clouding it again. And it was after it burst. I don't know that I'm pink clouding it when I'm on that thing.
Yeah.
And I've heard that you've got to kind of be wary of people who get too well too quick.
Yeah.
But some guys I've also seen in the rooms, it's like, oh great, I've got a job now, I've got a girl, I've got this and that, I'm getting all this, and then poof, they're gone.
They coast, and they eventually, they start going to less meetings. They maybe don't check in with their sponsor as much.
Yeah.
They don't do service work. Like, what's weird too, it started happening when I moved in alone. But then it still happens to me, is like, this is the longest amount of sobriety I've ever had since my first drink or drug.
Yeah.
And life is getting as good as it ever has been. And I want to continue this. And I start seeing and truly believing we have a daily reprieve. And we have tools that we need to do on a daily basis and use.
Mm-hmm.
But all we're kind of guaranteed in this program is to get through today. And when God willing, tomorrow comes, we do it again. And that has been that was I did not want to live one day at a time early on in sobriety.
Yeah.
Now it's like I can be at peace with that and like do the best I can. And that ties back to having a gift, but like it wasn't like that from day one. And painstaking really stuck out to me
Yeah.
in that reading. And sometimes
Painstaking.
quickly, sometimes slowly. Another thing I heard in the rooms a lot is time takes time.
Yeah.
And that was like nails on a chalkboard for me at first, but it's true, man. And it's the ability to be in the present moment continually and be aware of that is one of the best parts of sobriety for me today.
Yeah. As you get like things keep getting better and better in this process for you, do you ever notice yourself like afterwards, like have you owned and totaled several pink clouds in this thing since it's been getting better? Like
yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm way more aware of kind of like me hijacking my will.
Ooh,
and like
okay.
convincing myself like this is going to happen. You just need to do this and that and this and that. And then maybe it takes an hour, maybe it takes 3 days, maybe it takes a month. I'm reminded like I'm not the one that's dictating this. Like I can do my best day in and day out. I can work hard, but like whatever the future holds, like I hope to make it there. But I'm not the one controlling it, you know. I had in one of my themes, the delusion of control and or influence, and that was a realization after my spiritual awakening of how convinced I was that I could play God and I could influence people or situations, and that I knew more than others and that I had more power than others, and it was insane.
So you don't play God as much as you used to.
No, but I still.
Do you catch yourself?
Oh yeah.
What does that look like for you?
It's usually. I usually realize it. I take like 2 to 4 walks a day.
All right.
And when I'm taking a walk, I'm able to kind of maybe take a step back or gain that conscious contact and maybe say a prayer and kind of like laugh at myself like, whoa, like listen, work hard, try to do some good things, make some ground on a goal of yours, but like however it ends up, like that's the way it's supposed to be, and you can only influence it so much. Like I can't, completely or absolutely cause something to happen or like achieve something all on my own. Like no.
Yeah. And does that bring you more peace and serenity, knowing that you're not God? Yeah,
it does. At first, it was really a shot to the ego, but more time I get under my belt, little more manageable and serene things are on a daily basis. Absolutely, I love that I'm not God.
Yeah, that's great. Like you talk about the shot to the ego. It is a shot to the ego. It's a major shot to the ego. Like, what was the most ego deflating moment for you in recovery? Do you even have a recollection of that? Like one that maybe sticks out to you?
So many. I don't even know where to begin. I just like
there was that many.
It was like realizing like I was closer to like being like a teenager, like that needed to be supported, than being an adult with like maybe a bright career ahead and being able to like support others. That was like that really hurt me, like realizing like, but it makes sense. I started drinking, I think at age 15, 16, I started smoking marijuana at 16. I can't remember when it became a daily thing. I would guess 18 to 20. And there were times where, like, the longest I stopped until I went completely sober with marijuana was for a year. But it makes sense how I was closer in a lot of ways to being like a 16-year-old.
Yeah.
That like didn't own a car and didn't pay for my car insurance and didn't pay rent and wasn't able to hold a job, was able to do a part-time job, get a little money in my pocket, maybe buy my own food and buy my own medical marijuana, the priorities.
Oh, that
right?
was always the priority, right?
Yeah.
It's like let somebody else handle the bills.
Straight to the dispensary. It was and man, that all just deflated my ego.
Yeah.
But it makes sense, because I started cultivating those bad habits at around 16.
Yeah.
And I really didn't get to 18 like from a self-supporting or be managing my life in a professional sense. I never got to that when I was drinking or drugging.
Yeah, it's
never.
Yeah, I heard that you basically are the age that you started.
Yeah, I believe that.
Yeah, and see, now I heard this thing when I first got to AA meetings. There was this, I've grown up in these rooms, and I was like, what are you talking about? You're a full-grown adult. Like, I didn't understand that.
Yeah.
And so, like, do you feel like you've been like grown up in these rooms, like you've?
Yeah. Yep. There's no way like I would be able to pay my rent on time, live alone, hold a full-time job, all those things if I wasn't sober.
Yeah.
It would never have worked.
Yeah.
It just wouldn't.
Yeah.
And tie it back to it's a gift, like.
Yeah.
And a lot of people never get to that point, and there are some people that get sober and never get to that point.
Yeah.
And really humbles me and makes me grateful for the things I have.
Yeah.
It's interesting. It's an addiction that I definitely struggle with to this day, and I'm not in denial, but it's something that like I'm going to have to work on is like social media. And boy, when I would be smoking AM and PM and getting high all day and just scrolling through social media and seeing people riding in Lamborghinis and taking private jets to Greece, and their job was literally like making a music video or this or that.
Yeah.
And then poor me, like I barely have enough to get enough money to get my fix, and I have to go wash golf clubs for 6 hours and then do that 4 times a week. Like I was such a victim in my head, and it was perpetuated by what I was seeing on my phone and social media. And a lot of it's not reality. And it took about a year of sobriety for me to start grasping it. And I still have those realizations today, 2+ years in. Like whatever I'm seeing on my social media feed is not a representation of reality for your average adult American on a day-to-day basis. And I couldn't believe that when I was drinking and drugging. Yeah. And I still like, I can catch myself, but it almost like, it was like, almost like, it was like doing damage, but not from like utilizing a drink or a drug more, but it was like a compounding effect. It almost made like my high or my drunk like more depressing when you would come down. Yeah. Because you thought like most people were living like that.
Yeah, like envy almost.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a big character defect.
So you still work on that.
Sure.
Well, I think we all do.
Sure.
Right? We see social media, we see people like jet setting and stuff, but then I have to go back to this thing. I heard that like sometimes those houses on Cribs, remember MTV Cribs?
Sure.
They were rented.
Yeah.
The cars were
Yeah.
rented. Like
That-
I'm like,
and
how's
like
this person have a hit single and
Sure.
that big of a mansion?
Sure. And I was so naive when I was drinking or drugging. I was like, that's BS. Or like, if you have fame, you're set for life. And that's like that just it's wild. You know, this is what it's I think it's a military term, but like the rent is due every day or you know, something like that. And
Yeah.
like I'm grateful to be able to live my life one day at a time and have some serenity and manageability and possibly create something better that I've never experienced. But that comes from, you know, practicing these principles in all of my affairs and staying in the present moment. And without sobriety, I could not do that.
Yeah. Well,
And I think social media and smartphones, I don't think they're all bad. I think they can be used in good for a lot of things, but like you put someone that has addiction and substance abuse issues, it only compounds the effect it has on someone mentally. And I speak from experience.
oh yeah, I can totally identify. Like right now, even forgetting to silence it before we start the podcast, and it goes off.
No
but
worries.
like I remember like sitting in, you know, I'd be high at like 2:30 in the morning, just high out of my mind, just scrolling.
Yep.
And the worst detox for me was my phone. Like when I went to treatment, they took my phone. I didn't know what to do with my hands for like several days.
You
I was walking
caught
like
yourself reaching for your pocket and then realizing like there's nothing there. And like, yeah, it's wild. It's pretty wild.
Yeah. This so you're shared today, like us, what we were talking about, kind of reminds me of this on 267. It says, I'm rated as a modestly successful man. My stock of material goods isn't great, but I have a fortune in friendships, courage, self-assurance, and honest appraisal of my own abilities. Above all, I have gained the greatest thing according to any man, the love and understanding of a gracious God, who has lifted me from the alcoholic scrap heap to a position of trust where I've been able to reap the rich rewards that come from showing a little love for others and from serving them as I can.
Yeah, I love that. And ties to a couple other things I wanted to share.
Yeah, go ahead.
Was I was so selfish in my days of addiction and alcoholism, and I still have those defects today. I'm aware of it, and I can take a step back and see a bigger picture, but you know, something that I cling on to, that it did not happen at first in sobriety. And maybe it took 2 years of continuous sobriety to start like opening up to and embracing and truly believing. But like the fifth tradition, every group of recovering alcoholics has one main purpose and should continue to pass the message of recovery to those that are still suffering from the disease of addiction.
Yeah.
And being able to help someone, that is like, that's not all I live for, but like that's maybe the biggest thing today that I live for.
Yeah.
You know?
So working with others.
Sure.
Yeah.
A purpose. And, you know, something that I put on my social media, I'm fine with being public on it. And it's a quote. I'm big on the 12 and 12. That's my favorite book.
Oh, it is.
It's a line that I took out that like the first time I read it, I was like, yeah, like that could be like my motto for the rest of my life is living usefully and walking humbly under the grace of God.
Wow.
And that
I love that.
keeps me right sized.
Wow. That's so how are you feeling today? Like after 2 years of this and kind of like, so the 12 and 12 is your book. And so that's where you find your messages at.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I love that.
Yep.
Yeah.
I feel that I'm able, do I do it perfectly? Not at all. But I feel like I'm able to live usefully by participating in the fellowship, doing a little service work. And it doesn't only mean helping an alcoholic or an addict. Like, I have a neighbor that I've helped and he's helped me. I have family members that when they need help, I've been able to help and they've helped me. I have friends that are almost, I consider family, that have helped me a lot, and I'm able to maybe give back a little. That allows me to truly believe I'm living usefully.
Well, and that sounds like being of maximum service, not just to people in the program, but just to people around you and in your life.
And I needed that because when I was going through alcoholism and addiction, I became so selfish and self-centered. And just, I would lie, I would cheat, I would steal, and I don't do that today. Am I perfect? No, but like...
I don't think anybody's
99%
perfect.
better than what I was, thank God. And that kind of circles to the next part of that quote I read was walking humbly. And I do try to stay in a mindset of humility day in and day out, and acknowledging that like I don't practice a perfect program, that I can always get a little better, and that I'm striving to do so. And that line ends with under the grace of God. And man, that I touched on it earlier on this episode, is like I never not believed in God, but I had a very jaded perception and a very limited and like human viewpoint of God. And now I'm way more open-minded.
Yeah.
I hear people in the rooms speak of it as the universe. I hear people in the rooms tie it back to traditional religion. And I'm open-minded to all of it. And I think the more open-minded I am, the more I realize like I don't know what God is, but I do believe in it or him. And life has gotten a lot better for me in sobriety, and I attribute that to the grace of my higher power.
Yeah. That was you were talking about that, like being open-minded, like that meeting today. I still like it's still sticking in my head. I'm like, that was the ultimate be open-minded meeting, that it was just wow. Mm-hmm. So being open-minded, like if I would have said to you 2 years ago, 3 years ago, mm-hmm. like, hey, you're going to be more open-minded doing recovery. You're going to be more open-minded than you've probably ever been in life. What would you think you would have said?
I wouldn't have told you to fuck off, but in my head, I would be thinking, fuck off. This guy does not know how much weed I've smoked, acid I've taken, and books on philosophy I've read.
Oh, okay.
And
you're like a
boy, was I misguided and delusional.
All right. Well, you seem pretty happy, joyous, and free today. And so before we go, it's been an absolute pleasure talking with you. Yeah. Like, it's cool. Like, we've known each other a while now. It's cool to get to know more about you.
Definitely.
And that's the beauty of this. What the newcomer, as they say, is the most important person in the room. Mm-hmm. A newcomer might be listening to this right now. Do you have anything that you would like to share for the newcomer?
Yeah. I mentioned it earlier, but this was something I heard in the rooms that like I'm just now embracing and believing, but there is an easier, softer way. I truly believe that, and that is the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, or the 12 steps. And mm-hmm. I'll kind of close with, there's another old timer that I really respect and have spent a lot of time with in meetings and outside of meetings. And he's a big proponent of like, you don't know the life that's out there, and you don't know what God has in store, but you can find out on a daily basis. But you can also go back to your old ways. And it was something that I've heard in our ex-home group. You can either have everything and not drink or drug, or you can drink and drug and not have anything. And that was something I really rolled my eyes at first, but I think there's a lot of truth in that.
Yeah, there is. I think we all have things though that we roll our eyes at in meetings at the beginning. I'm like, oh, or we hear somebody share the same thing over and over. And we're like, oh, this guy again, but some of the stuff that alcoholics do say or addicts do say that are really in the program with both feet do hold depth and weight. And sometimes it takes that open-mindedness to really see it.
And the time accumulated together, put together continuously, and having an open mind and realizing like that things are getting better and experiencing it. And then it, like, for me, it's like, okay, like, I believe this is a gift. I don't want to give this up. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to continue to go on this journey of recovery. And there's a lot to it, but I wouldn't want to live any other way.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you're not living any other way, because then we wouldn't have this, awesome opportunity to sit down and talk. And you wouldn't have saw that meeting today.
Right.
I'm like, when are they going to whip out the ring bell? Like, ding, it's fight night. Let's go. Like, wow, that was the best thing at noon on a Saturday I could have asked for.
Yeah, that was entertainment.
Yeah. So, well, Calvin, thank you very much. The recovery band's looking at me. They're like, you've been way over time. I can't believe we sat here for what, an hour and 6 minutes now?
Hour 6? Okay.
Yeah, wow. Yeah.
Next time, 45.
Next time, 45. Yeah, that works. So they're looking at me. They want to take us out. And so thank you so much for your time today. And goodbye and be well, everyone.
Thanks, Mark.
Yeah, thanks, Calvin. Oh, get down. Yeah, you like that?
Love it.
Yeah. If you look, they're wearing leisure suits too while playing that. Yeah, very old school. All right. Take care, everyone. Bye.